Before we start today's episode, we are very proud to announce that Uncovered with LordanArts can be found on Roku's new Mysteria channel.
Tune into Mysteria, channel 548, on the Roku channel to watch us investigate suspicious cases and deep dive into infamous crimes.
And you can watch for free. Just visit therokuchannel.com and search Mysteria.
You can also get the Roku channel app on your smart TV, or if you have a Roku stick, head over to channel 548 on the live TV guide.
There you'll find not only this amazing team, but also episodes of Three Men and a Mystery and many other great true crimers. Dive deeper into true crime with Mysteria. I'm John Lordan, and I've been looking into mysterious occurrences since 2015. Joining me today are some friends from Uncovered.com.
I'm Rachel Roslett, a forensic psychologist and head of case research and data at Uncovered.
And I'm Andrea Cipriano. I'm also a forensic psychologist, and I'm a content specialist at Uncovered.
Welcome back to LordanArts Uncovered. And today, we are looking into an unsolved case that I've personally seen a ton of social media posts about due to the victim's only daughter, Natalia, sharing her struggles about this case online and reaching out for help. This is about the death of Shawn O'Brien. Shawn O'Brien was born on December 5th, 1971. He was the son of the late Ellen and Raymond O'Brien. Shawn grew up in Providence, Rhode Island, surrounded by his family and friends, which included his 4 sisters and a brother. Shawn was a talented contractor, working for Artisani & Sons Roofing Company and Marshall Building Products. Shawn had Natalia when he was only 21 years old with a woman named Amy. They never married, however, they did have a close relationship for many years, including right up to his death. In 2006, Shawn was living in Cranston, Rhode Island, part of the Providence metropolitan area. Wikipedia states that Cranston was named one of the 100 best places to live in the United States by Money magazine back in 2006 and ranked 36th on the list of America's 50 best places to live in a 2014 survey done by 24/7 Wall Street. Cranston had a population of around 80,000 people in 2006. That was the second largest in the state.
Shawn O'Brien was a loving father and a funny, genuine, and caring man. Shawn was known as a true gentleman, according to his daughter, Natalia. She recalls her father as the, quote, pull out your chair, hold the door, and always pick up the tab kind of guy. Natalia further describes her father as the funniest guy on the planet, who would also give you the shirt off his back if you needed it. Though Shawn did struggle with drug and alcohol use in his life, he always made sure to make time for his daughter. She was truly the highlight of his life, and he would do anything to make sure she was happy and taken care of.
Shawn was quick-witted and an absolute jokester who loved to pull harmless, fun pranks. Shawn was the life of the party, and he carried himself a certain way where you couldn't ignore him when he entered a crowded room. One of his favorite things in life was making people smile.
That being said, Shawn's living situation was somewhat rocky. He was living in the basement of a duplex-style apartment that was owned by a man named Armand Rouleau, and he lived in the ground level space. Despite this location being literally on Pleasant Street, the situation in the home was far from that. On June 8th, 2006, Authorities responded to a report of a disturbance between Shawn and Armand, who were reportedly arguing about noise levels in the home. At the time, Armand informs the responding officer that there was no physical altercation, but he would like to file a police report that would help him in an eviction process.
So I reached out to Natalia to try to get a better understanding of all this. She told me that Shawn had actually been living there for about a year and a half. And despite this mention of wanting to evict Shawn, Armand never actually filed or started any type of formal eviction process. I also asked if Natalia knew about any physical altercations to have ever happened between Shawn and Armand, and she says there's none that she's aware of that happened between the two of them. But there were some physical altercations with someone else. We'll get to that in just a moment.
July 21st, 2006 started as an average day for Shawn. He went to work, and after that, Shawn's companion, Amy, visited his apartment with their daughter to confirm plans that they had to go to a local festival later in the evening. These plans changed, however, because Shawn's daughter, Natalia, who was 13 at the time, she had a headache.
Shawn then asked Amy if she would drop him off at a local bar, Billy's Frosted Mug, because he did not want to be in the home alone with Armand, his landlord, and Armand's girlfriend, Lynn. Shawn had previously expressed that he specifically did not want to be in the home alone with Lynn because of threats she had made against him in the past. Tensions were definitely high in the home.
Yeah, so Lynn is the person that Natalia mentioned to me in regards to physical altercations with Shawn. Natalia had heard that Lynn flipped a table, that she physically assaulted Shawn and had scratched him on various occasions. Basically, Shawn was going to spend as little time as possible in that home, especially if she was around, and mainly to keep himself protected from her. So if they weren't going to be able to go out for this music festival like they had planned, he decided, hey, I'm gonna go out and spend the night at this bar.
So when Amy agrees to drop him off at the bar, Shawn calls his sister Erin to see if she's in town and whether she wanted to hang out. She, however, doesn't answer, so Shawn assumes that she's just not available. He decides to go to the bar by himself, and Amy drops him off there at approximately 6:10 p.m.
Yeah, and the bar is not far away at all. It's maybe half a mile. I mean, honestly, he could have walked there in about 10 minutes, meaning also he could walk home within about 10 minutes. I do have an image I pulled up of the area from back in 2011. I think it even looked a little different back in 2006, but this is where the bar was located. Pretty short walk back and forth to there. I had some question when I was originally looking into this about like, well, how did he get home? There seems to be a part of this story that's missing, especially with some of the circumstances. I'm just concerned, like, could he have gotten into something there, or did someone follow him home and harm him? I guess that could still be considered a possibility with how close the bar is, but let's go ahead and keep rolling.
I would think if it happened at the bar, somebody would have called that in, you would think.
You would think. You would think. Depends on the bar, I think.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
So Shawn usually arrived at work between 7 and 8 a.m., but the following day we get the first red flag that something may be wrong because he doesn't show up for work. Around 5:30 that evening, Shawn's sister Karen goes ahead and stops by his apartment to speak with him. But upon entering the apartment, she finds Shawn on the floor and he is unresponsive.
When she finds Shawn, she immediately calls 911 and explains that she needs help because Shawn is having or has had a seizure. At the time, he's reportedly laying on his stomach with his feet facing the door and his head laying in a small pool of blood.
Shawn's daughter, Natalia, the one that's now leading the charge to bring national attention to Shawn's case, explains that Armand had run out of the home as Karen arrived, shouting for her to come in quick because Shawn's been having a seizure for over an hour.
Police are dispatched to Shawn's apartment just before 6 p.m., and by the time responding officers arrive, they witness Shawn being moved into an ambulance to be rushed to a hospital. During a discussion with Cranston fire officials, police learned that Shawn did have a history of seizures. But fire officials also explained that he had bitten the inside of his mouth, which was causing it to bleed, but they didn't note any other further injuries. When police entered Shawn's apartment, authorities noted no signs of a struggle in his bedroom.
While interviewing Shawn's roommate, first responders learned that he had last seen Shawn at approximately 5 p.m. Armand said he was in his room watching a baseball game.
So it appears that the scene is somewhat matching the story that's told by Armand. Natalia told me that per Armand, he recalls going downstairs and seeing my dad watching a ball game, returning an hour later, and my dad had been in a seizure. He recalls it was close to an hour my dad had been seizing. How would he have known that? Like if you go down and you see someone and they're watching a ball game and then you go down an hour later, that seizure could have started 2 seconds before you got in, 2 minutes, 20 minutes. You don't know. It's a very strange detail in this that he's kind of throwing around this. He's been seizing for an hour, but then that also raises a question. If he was seizing for an hour, why didn't Armand call 911?
That's exactly what I was thinking. It seems obvious.
Right.
Yeah.
So while the analysis by the first responders seems to fit Armand's story, soon other considerations come into play. When he arrives at the hospital, doctors note that they do not believe that Shawn's injuries were a result of only a seizure. Shawn's physical injuries are severe. He struggled with brain swelling from blunt force trauma to his head, and he also had several abrasions, bruises, and cuts on his head.
On July 25th, 2006, Shawn was taken off of life support and ultimately succumbed to these injuries.
Yeah. Well, with the doctor's insights and the police records of at least one previous disturbance at the home, seems to me that investigators would have a pretty certain, strong direction to head in. I'm also kind of curious about these time frames. Like if we can't trust the information from Armand, we have Shawn last being seen by a family member being dropped off at the bar the night before at around 6 p.m. He misses work, and then his sister finds him almost 24 hours later, and he's clinging to life. So if we assume that something else is at play here, if there was some type of altercation, we've got a very wide time frame in terms of when that could have occurred. But any of those cases, I'm thinking investigators they're going right back to the duplex on Pleasant Street, right?
You would think so, but that's not exactly what happened. It wasn't until 5 days after Shawn was found that his apartment was sealed off and the crime scene revisited by police.
And that was after several requests were made by Shawn's family members to actually do so. But unfortunately, the investigation in Shawn's case is very brief, and it seemingly ends still without answers.
There is another interesting detail in all of this, though. The day after Shawn was taken off life support, Lynn Halal, Armand's girlfriend, is arrested for assault and battery against Armand. She is interviewed by detectives and is transferred to a cell block to be processed for domestic violence charges against Armand Rouleau. And, personally, I'm glad that we're talking about this aspect of domestic violence. While we know that a lot, maybe most of the cases of domestic violence are male on female violence, it is the other way around too. There are instances of domestic violence that women commit as well. It's less common, but it does happen. And I think it's something that we need to recognize and talk about.
Yeah, there is also something to violence in general and about how sometimes it can be relayed through people almost. Like someone attacks someone else, they become a victim, they want to get their power back, and they turn around and attack someone else. So it just it makes me wonder about the possibility, like could Armand have been, beating her up and then she's hitting him back, he gets the order of protection. Like it's just it's a really tricky thing to understand just how anger and lashing out like that can ripple through relationships. And obviously something is really bad in this house. I mean, if it's
Yeah.
at the point Shawn doesn't even want to stay at his own home, like,
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Well, and I'm also wondering, could it have been that Armand was like, this is ridiculous. I'm going to tell them what really happened. And so, things escalate between them. And that is her warning to him to keep quiet.
Mm-hmm. And I think what's so interesting in this too is we know that Lynn actually has a criminal history beyond just this house on Pleasant Street. So a year and a half before Shawn died back in January of 2005, Lynn was actually arrested for domestic assault against the man that she was dating at the time. So Lynn was 45 and the man that she was with was 69. So the report said that she grabbed him by the throat, scratched him, and actually threw a measuring cup of hot water at him. So since he was over 60, this was an automatic felony. And so this, to me, shows at least that there's a little bit of a pattern here of her being aggressive that just transcends just this house.
yeah, absolutely. And it definitely raises the suspicions and complexities in this case. We do know that the first responders made sketches, so let's take a look at these. I also asked Natalia if Shawn was only renting a downstairs bedroom, because I had only seen the bedroom sketch initially. She actually told me it was a bedroom, a half bathroom, a kitchenette, and a large living room area that he had to himself down there. Let's take a quick look. This is the front of the duplex, and from what I understand, you enter the door. I believe it's actually a door in the back that leads to a stairwell that goes down to the basement area that Shawn was renting. When you do get down there, this is a sketch of this says the upstairs living room. Interesting. Whoever drew it, it's been redacted. Weird. I wonder if there is a separate small living room that's downstairs. I wonder why they drew this. Why would they draw the upstairs living room?
Well, we do know, and we'll talk about it more in a minute, that there was blood found in other locations. Is this noting any about that?
Yeah, no, I'm not seeing. There is something that's written above sofa here, but I can't quite make out.
I wonder if it's related to, I know there were some reports that said that the family noticed that there were missing items. So they knew that a brass lamp was missing. The hammer that Shawn used was missing. The alarm clock and a dumbbell set. So I wonder if they were going through the rest of the house, sketching, looking for some of these items.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah, that raises a big question for me. I've already got more questions for Natalia. I'm going to have to reach back to her. Bedroom. Here is the bedroom that Shawn was found in. His bed's just in the middle. He's basically between that and the wall. The door is also on this side. They're noting he was face down, looking towards the doorway. Also, from what Natalia tells me, he's basically just in his underwear. And the other thing about these sketches that we notice, they are noting blood that is on his bed. And for me, that just kind of raises a question. I'm always wondering about the physics of these situations. If he's walking into his bedroom, he has a seizure, he goes down. How do we have blood that winds up on top of the bed? And if we are buying the seizure story, we have to think that the fall or the act of falling in some way, he hits something and that causes this traumatic injury to his head. How is it getting from him being on the floor there up to that blood being on the bed?
Mm-hmm. Well, and there's a discrepancy. The first responders, it said that they didn't note any visible injuries on him, but then when he goes to the hospital, his face is, his head has all of these issues. It's all very curious with all of this conflicting information.
Yeah, and to your point too, Rachel, I remember reading that when he was at the hospital, family noticed that he had rug burns on his face. And for me, I look at that and think, I don't know that you fall off your own mattress and get rug burns from the floor under you. I don't even know if we know that there was carpet in there, but just the idea that did something happen and he actually collapsed elsewhere in the apartment. And then his body was moved to stage it to look like he had a seizure on his bed.
Right. Right. Yeah. It's really, really odd.
Yeah.
I'm also wondering if there was a possibility he was attacked somewhere and then moved. Did they place him on the bed? He came out of unconsciousness long enough, tried to roll to get over to help or to try to get to a phone or something, and then wound up in that position. Just the blood is really throwing me off being on top of the bed like that. It just doesn't hold up. Like when you're trying to sell this story that this guy had a seizure, he fell down, he hit his head and he died. Like,
no.
Yeah, the blood on the bed just doesn't go with that story.
And there's other pieces that we're going to talk about in a minute that don't line up with that seizure thing too. And to be clear, we know that, especially if you're having a grand mal seizure, that these can look very violent and disturbing. But I think it's the extent of his injuries and places where we find blood that, yes, they are very violent looking, but it doesn't explain a lot of the other things that happen that we see.
Yeah. Yeah. This is just another drawing, basically no new information on it. It actually has less. It's not even noting the blood that was found on the bed here. It does show kind of where the stairwell is and then the entryway to where his door is. And there was, Natalia told me about this as well. There's another door down there that kind of separates the upstairs living area from the downstairs living area. And I think they're showing that door here. Yeah.
So besides the blood that they found in the bedroom, they also find more blood. So sometime after Shawn's death, Amy and his sister returned to the apartment to get some of Shawn's belongings. And inside the apartment, they find additional bloodstains that had been covered by various items. So they reported to have found blood on the walls, the floors, the doors, the pillows, blankets, and dining room chairs around Shawn's apartment.
Yeah, Natalia tells me they also found blood in the bathroom, in Shawn's bathroom, and in the I guess it's a smaller living room that he had down there. Man, this is one of those cases that really needs like an expert analysis, especially of the blood patterns that are going on here. Because if this is what we're thinking the possibility is, if he was attacked and let's say his hammer was used or some object like that, the fling patterns that could happen. Was there any blood that was found on the ceilings or on the walls, kind of in odd places that would show that someone was swinging something? We're hearing all these descriptions and just very kind of simple details. We know that there's blood everywhere, but yeah.
Right. And someone isn't walking around while they're seizing and spewing blood around the apartment.
Yeah.
This guy was seizing. He is on, he's incapacitated.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm also wondering just about the whole sighting of, oh, well, he was watching a ball game. Was he sitting in his underwear watching a ball game on, the day that he skipped out on work? Like it seems so much more likely that he came back from the bar and something happened that night. And almost like, I mean, honestly, Armand never calls the authorities. It's when his sister shows up that all that gets initiated.
Yes. Right. I was thinking that earlier, hearing Rachel recount some of that it's not until Karen, his sister, pulls up to the house that Armand runs out and says, "Come quick, something happened." And to think like how long were they in the house with Shawn incapacitated? And then it's not until they hear tires roll up to the house where they go, "Oh my God, someone else is coming." And then like have this, what seems like a story fabricated, honestly.
Yeah. I mean, just the fact that Armand, his landlord, I think we need to think about it. It's this guy's landlord, and he's sitting around with his landlord in his underwear watching TV. I mean, I guess, but with all of these pieces that just don't quite fit together, it makes this all very suspicious.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of parts of this story that they're hard to swallow. Honestly, it doesn't seem like there's a super deep mystery going on here. I mean, it seems pretty clear that there's some type of attack that happened. It likely happened in that downstairs apartment, based at least on the limited blood description that we are hearing about. I actually asked Natalia if Armand was ever questioned, and Lynn. I mean, Lynn's the one that has more of a criminal past here when it comes to this. Yes. Now, what happened was Armand initially lawyered up, said, no, I wasn't going to be helpful at all. And then apparently later decided he would go ahead and give a statement, but only with Lynn there. So, and this is based on what Natalia tells me, both of them went in together. Lynn provided a written statement, and that was it.
That just makes me feel like, is Lynn controlling the situation? Like she had to be in there to make sure that Armand told the right story. I also wonder if there's a little implicit bias here that maybe the law enforcement isn't thinking of. I mean, we don't often think of women being violent in this way. And so it may not have been top of mind for them to think, hey, this guy's girlfriend is the one that beat this guy up.
Yeah, I was thinking about that earlier, knowing the list of the items that have been missing from the home and this concept that it's typically, it's not typically women who are violent in these cases, but we do know in cases where women snap, shall I say, they take weapons of opportunity. And a lot of the things that we know are missing from the house, so the heavy lamp, the hammer, other dumbbells, those are items that I would see a woman reaching for, whereas a man is more likely to use their own hands. So I just think that's super interesting. And then, of course, knowing that they were questioned together just adds a whole nother layer to this.
Yeah, it really does. I don't know how that happened at all. But so what's the official determination with this case?
So Shawn's initial cause of death was reported by a Rhode Island medical examiner as blunt force trauma to the head. And in the report, the medical examiner explains that Shawn's skull was fractured and there were several other injuries to his head. He also noted that there was cocaine found in his system, and all of these things, plus Shawn's history of seizures, led the medical examiner to officially label Shawn's manner of death as undetermined.
And while there are substantial injuries to Shawn, officials are left questioning the cause. Colonel Michael Lindquist, the Cranston police chief, said, quote, "Unfortunately, as I sit here today, we still don't know exactly how that blunt force trauma occurred." Independent forensic pathologist Dr. Timothy Gallagher notes, so he cannot with 100% certainty rule out that it was an accident because there are no witnesses to corroborate what exactly happened in his final moments.
I mean, these are the types of cases that I think are some of the most difficult to solve. When you have something like this that happens within four walls and one of the parties isn't able to speak for themselves anymore. Then we've got this other condition, possible violent relationship going on here. The strong emotional ties around that and how that can impede this. I mean, I know proving homicide isn't easy in general. I also have to wonder, how often are you able to ever rule out anything with 100% certainty? It's kind of a steep expectation that I feel like has been applied to this case when there's some just common sense that should be applied instead. I mean, what kind of accident could have occurred down there? Obviously, he has a seizure, he falls down, he hits his head, and he dies. That's too simple for the scene that's being described here. There's too much blood in too many different areas. We have too many other strange conditions going on. I actually asked Natalia, I'm like, did they ever tell you of a theory they had about how this accident happened? Or hire a accident reconstruction specialist, get someone to actually review the scene and figure out, hey, yeah, this could have actually happened this way. She's like, no, I've never been given anything close to a theory on that. I mean, could it have happened anywhere else? That's why I was kind of checking the distance at the bar. I asked her, do you know if they questioned people at the bar? She believes they actually did go and talk to some people at the bar. But if he would have come home with a massive head wound going down the stairs, there should have been traces of that scene as well. They might have seen blood outside or something leading up to the home if he did walk home. I don't know.
It just seems like one of those cases. Well, I mean, I think probably good investigative procedures would call for this, but especially here, there's just so many questions. And so you have to be thorough on each end of it. Like, it may be an accident, but there are so many other details here that aren't explainable with that theory. So how then do you explain these other things? And I think that needs to be explored before you can come up with a definitive theory around this. And the fact that the two people in the home that are telling you what happened don't want to talk to you, and then you have them together where they can corroborate each other's statements in real time, seems really crazy.
Mm-hmm.
In the records that you guys have seen on this, have you seen much in terms of photos of the scene? Did they take pictures of all the different blood locations?
So I know when the family went back after he passed, that and when they first see the scene and start to notice that, oh my God, wait, there is blood all over the apartment or all over the unit. The family started taking their own photos with a camera that they had because they realized they didn't think that this was actually processed. So when they do take their own photos with the low quality camera they had, they do get police to eventually come. And I believe they took photos finally after it was deemed a crime scene. But other than that, you have days between when his body was taken to the hospital and when the family comes back where things were moved. We read that there was stuff balled up in a sheet and there was just things moved around that weren't there before. So Armand and Lynn had access to the space, and that definitely changed what we know is, what the case looks like.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I keep thinking of like the staircase story. Like, I mean, it's just blood analysis can be so important in terms of understanding what happens in these kind of at home situations like that. And 2006 wasn't 100 years ago, but I think it's a different landscape now when it comes, especially to like digital photography. I mean, even just trying to find the picture of the bar for you guys, like I pulled up images from 2008. It was like, this is garbage. Like I can't even tell what this picture is. I think it's just a different thing. If they would have really taken just a great shot of digital, got everything on digital film, let alone the types of devices we have now where they can go into a crime scene, set a pod in the middle of it, and it gets a 3D scan of the whole room. There's a truth here that's been missed. And when you're a family wondering, when you're a daughter wondering what happened to my father.
Well, and as we've discussed and mentioned many times, this just doesn't pass the common sense test.
Yeah. Yeah. So is there any information to support that Armand or Lynn, or possibly both, might be responsible for this in some way?
Well, in November of 2006, Lynn would be arrested for violating a no contact order that was placed on her again with regards to Armand. Then, a year after Shawn's death, Armand Rouleau and Lynn Halal are officially named persons of interest by the Cranston police.
In more recent news, in June of 2022, independent forensic pathologist Dr. Shipping Bao determined that Shawn's cause of death was a, quote, skull fracture with intracranial hemorrhage due to a strike by another person. He also determined that, in his opinion, Shawn's manner of death should be relabeled as a homicide rather than undetermined.
Well, let's get a copy of that letter over to the medical examiner that left it undetermined, because we just did a little mini research before we started recording today, and that medical examiner has been helpful on another case that we covered here on the show. Maybe there's another chance here. Admittedly, I looked at the letter from Dr. Bao, and it's extremely brief. I mean, like literally what we just told you is about the entire contents of the letter. But we have no pattern of violence established between Armand and Shawn in official records or social information. We've got this now new expert opinion and all these questions of these logic issues that we have with the scene with the limited information we do have, but they're very hard to ignore nonetheless. Isn't that enough to get this manner of death changed?
Well, apparently not. Shawn's daughter has not only been fighting to find answers in her father's case and to raise awareness, but also to have his case officially relabeled as a homicide investigation. She tells us that it's currently considered a suspicious death and the case is inactive until some new information comes in to change that.
It just seems like some common sense needs to be applied here. I mean, what sort of accident explains this? What could have possibly happened during that seizure? I've witnessed a seizure, and in the case that I saw, the person went straight down. I mean, yeah, we're talking convulsions and all that, but first thing was they were standing. Second thing, they were on the floor. So I understand that there's a lot of risk for some type of injury when that happens. After they were on the floor and they were convulsing, I know sometimes they might bite their tongue. We're hearing in this case, he bit the inside of his mouth. Like I understand those types of risks also, but to a point where this person loses their life, it just seems like something else is going on. But Natalia was told that based on the types of injuries that Shawn sustained, if we're supposed to believe this, he had a seizure, he fell down, all those injuries happened, that he basically would have been instantly unconscious. If that's true, how do we have blood getting all over the place? How do we have blood winding up on top of the bed? Plus, we've got this big time window in terms of when the attack could have happened, and it makes more sense that it happened earlier. We've got him wearing what he probably would wear for going to bed. We got him missing work the next day. I asked Natalia about that. She told me specifically, quote, he would not typically miss work. My theory or idea is that he was attacked Friday night while going into bed. He was found in his underwear only. He was found in his bedroom, wedged between his bed and a dresser with blood in various areas on the mattress, carpet, and other areas of the apartment. I mean, the way she phrases it there, like I can't imagine her sitting with those questions and just not getting any help. I mean, she's been saddled with this for all these years.
Mm-hmm. And because of that, she's grown a lot of thick skin. She says, quote, there is a reason I am who I am. I am aggressive, hungry, and relentless. I am my father's daughter. So to the men expecting me to back down, you will need to stand taller to look me in the eyes to tell me to move on.
I know from some of the social media I've seen from Natalia that she's had to deal with some very tough feelings about the officials working on this case. I asked her where this is at currently, and she told me at this point, they do not answer my emails and meetings run tense. I've provided resources they refuse to use. I get very little to nothing from anyone in the department or in the Attorney General's office. They will not work with me. And that's why she needs help. If you have any information regarding Shawn's case, please contact the Cranston Police Department at 401-942-2211. And on top of that, also please send your tip in an email to justiceforshawnO'Brien@gmail.com. Natalia is personally offering a $1,000 reward for information in her father's case that would lead to an arrest and conviction. I asked Natalia, how do you honor your father's memory? And she said, we visit the cemetery often and let him know what's going on in our lives. We talk about him almost every day to keep his memory alive. We are working on this constantly, trying to shake something loose so we can just mourn the loss without the air of suspicion around it. If you'd like to follow Natalia's efforts, please visit twitter.com/J4SOB or search for Justice for Shawn O'Brien on Facebook and give her a follow to stay updated and also show Natalia that you're now part of her team.
Speaking of caring communities, if you're looking for a space to meet like-minded true crime enthusiasts and advocates while also engaging in case discussions, look no further than the Uncovered community.
There, you can attend live webinars presented by experts. We even have a space in the community completely dedicated to this series with John Lordan, where we discuss all the cases we've covered in each episode. Regardless of whether you join our community or not, you still have access to the Uncovered database where you can see all of our sources and a full timeline of Shawn's case. If you want to support Uncovered in another way, we also have merch available and we have a new design out there. You can find links in the description box below.
Thank you to Shawn's daughter, Natalia, the Justice for Shawn O'Brien website, Facebook page, Twitter account. There's also a TikTok as well, right, Andrea? Yeah. NBC 10, Cranston Police Department, Cranston Fire Department, Rhode Island Hospital, Danielle Hallen's YouTube channel, the Catch My Killer, Murder She Told, and Dark Down East podcasts, and Reddit and Wikipedia for information contributing to today's case. Also, a big thank you to my friends at uncovered.com and co-hosts on today's show, Rachel Rosalette and Andrea Cipriano. Please join us again soon as we look into yet another mystery that deserves to be uncovered.